Have you ever wanted to take your family to Disney World?
That's high up on the bucket list. It has been for many, many years.
I went when I was a youngster, but my wife she's Mickey Mouse mad.
You've said so before.
Yeah, she's big on Mickey.
Yeah.
Now Disney fans with at least 110,000 US, they can you can go on this elite package. It's a tour in the summer of 2023, so 110,000 US. The tour is 24 days long. Disney's calling it the bucket list adventure for 75 ultimate Disney fans. It covers 6 countries and all of Disney's 12 theme parks. It also includes a visit to the Taj Mahal, the pyramids of Giza, the Eiffel Tower.
Like the real Taj Mahal, the real pyramids.
Yep.
Seriously?
Yeah, and you go in there, it's your own aircraft. I think it's a 757. You go tour this whole...
For 110,000 US per person.
Per person.
I just want to work it out quickly. That is...
You don't have to. You can't afford it for yourself, so...
Yeah, that is millions of ZAR, man.
How's that, eh?
Yeah, that's crazy. But how cool would it be to do a trip like that? It's quite an initiative.
Yeah, I saw that and I thought you might appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, let's see what happens with the podcast,
maybe. Speaking of that, if you want to pledge a donation to Patreon, don't hesitate.
Yeah, you know where the digits need to be now, so.
Exactly. Hey, pal.
What did you put?
Having a good week.
Yeah, I think it's been made better that we've got something to look forward to at the end of the week.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where are we going?
Little trip to Dalstra.
Getting away from Joburg.
Yeah, a little bit of a last minute, make it happen sort of plan.
Yeah.
And let's hook it down there. Gonna have a jaw. We won't drink any beer.
No.
Won't touch any whiskey.
No.
And probably won't have any fun.
You've told 2 lies and we're only 2 minutes into the show. Yeah, so we're going away to Dalstrom for the weekend. It'll be quite nice. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think so too. It's going to be a lot of fun.
But let's jump into it now. Your old employer, SA Express. Finally, there's a final liquidation date. I know you enjoy chatting about SACs, so I'm going to throw it to you, Ryan. There's a final liquidation date set. I think it's sometime next month.
Okay. Yeah, I briefly saw that, flash past my interwebs during the week, and I didn't really pay any attention to it. I remember seeing that, and so what's the date? You say sometime next month?
Yeah, there's the whole story has been, it's quite sad actually if you think about the whole thing. And I say sad in terms of, I know there's a lot of people that really have been so badly affected by this whole SACS ordeal. And it's just gone on and on and on, and there's been no sort of end in sight. So I'm hoping now that this is it. Well, it is it actually. The routes and licenses have been sold off. They're gone. Not sold off. They're just cancelled. And there's actually nothing left. There was a last-ditch attempt for this Fly Sacks crowd, some ex-employees, to try and buy the thing.
Yeah.
That was, a failure from the start. And, there's nothing left. So final liquidation date is planned, and that'll be it for SA Express.
And what does that mean for you and I now as ex-employees? We're not going to cash out some ZAR there and put that towards the.
No, it ain't going to happen.
The Disney private charter.
No, it's not going to happen. Okay. So anyway, it's a bit of a end of the road for the whole SAC story. So I think this will probably be the last time that we mention it on the show.
Yeah. Thank goodness for that.
Moving on. Kenya Airways, they've continued their strategic move towards enhancing its network through partnerships. So they've joined up with Virgin Atlantic.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so they're making quite a big push here to link up with a few other big carriers, and nice to see that happening. Obviously, that's continuing with our story from last week in terms with the whole SAA agreement.
Yeah, and the whole collaboration. There was an article doing the rounds earlier this week, particularly in Europe. You might have seen it, where the theme is, getting back to the whole collaboration is king in Europe. With the airlines there having to do some hard thinking now around restructuring their networks and agreements in place. So happening all over. It's the only way we're going to see some better recovery, especially here in Africa.
Yeah, for sure. On some negative news, though, you see what happened with Dana the other day.
Yeah. I mean,
Dana's one of our clients here at Simaero, so...
Yeah, it's not nice to see them get affected or basically being shut down for now.
Shut down for now, but obviously that happens. I had an engine failure the other day on a 7.3, I believe. And we trained them here on the MD-80. So the MDs aren't affected, but I don't know. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen there. A bit of uncertainty around that airline at the moment. There's a bit of uncertainty around it's so difficult for airlines in Nigeria at the moment to operate with the fuel price the way it is.
Exactly.
And they're operating some older gen 737s and the MDs, which aren't exactly light on fuel. So not an easy situation for those guys. I hope that it gets rectified. They're a great bunch of guys. And even in that incident, it was handled really, really well. So one can only hope that this gets sorted out sooner rather than later.
No, absolutely. I mean, coupled with, was it Aero Contractors in Nigeria last week that has also been forced to close up shop.
Yeah,
I think they try to mask it up a bit by saying that they were closing because the aircraft needed maintenance and everything. But I think the truth behind the story is that it's basically due to cash flow.
You can't exactly blame the airlines. The fuel price is ridiculous there. If you're complaining about it in South Africa, the percentage increase over the last 6 months has just been crazy.
I can give it to you, right? Yeah, between January and May, the price for a litre of jet fuel in the country has said to have risen by nearly 370%, from around the equivalent of 46 cents US dollars to $1.70. It's obviously the most notably.
Oh, that's nuts.
370% increase. How do you work around those margins?
How do you manage? No, it's crazy. Very, very difficult.
No.
Otherwise, locally here, have you picked up anything else?
Not much.
It's been a quiet week in terms of we've actually thought about this before the show. There's a few international stories we'll get to now, but every now and again in the industry, you have these sort of lulls of news, I would say, but it's also a sign of this recovery times. The stories from week to week, they're actually the same, Ryan, but they're being passed on from airline to airline.
Yeah.
So Lufthansa are experiencing something this week. No doubt there'll be something similar with another European airline the next week. I mean, continuing with that Lufthansa story we spoke about, they have had to cancel more than 1,000 flights. 1,000 flights. And that's a staff strike, but mainly due to the existing staff have had to deal with a lot this past month. And can you imagine all those phone calls coming through about passengers that have lost their bags and the continuous sort of barrage from all the passengers? And it must take its toll. So they've had to cancel all those flights. And that was around, that's actually today, so the 27th.
Yeah.
When we're recording. So all those cancelled flights, It's over a pay dispute, of course.
Yeah, shucks. I mean, it's not cool to see what's going on there. But
20,000 staff, eh? That's 20,000 ground staff from the ground crew. Quite hectic.
Yeah, it's a massive portion of the support staff operationally that an airline needs, eh?
Before we go any further, I want to throw a question at you, and maybe people can comment on it. Do strikes have the same impact anymore? And what I mean is a strike is all based on we're not going to go to work and we're going to put pressure on the airlines to pay us what we want because otherwise the operation comes to a standstill. Well, the airlines have all proved that operations can be at a standstill for a very long extended periods. and they're still operating today. So do the unions have the same impact anymore when they go and say, well, we're going to go on strike and you better pay us, otherwise you're not going to be able to fly? The airlines will say, well no, we don't fly then.
I think that's a brilliant question, and I don't think that the strikes do bear very much impact. In fact, all it's doing is adding to the disruption. No, strikes, and we've seen it firsthand. Unions mean nothing. They do very little nowadays. They bear no real impact on the result of things. Every now and again, there's a few or a lucky group that gets it right to get the members what they want, or a better deal than what they're asking for. But for the most part, I think it's a fart in the bath, man.
Yeah, but it is a valid point. The unions, obviously, through this whole pandemic, it's we've saw the effect firsthand. I mean, nothing happened.
Exactly.
But I think you can see more of this going forward. I don't believe that the impact of a strike is there anymore. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think and the people that catch it on the news, does it impact negatively on in this case, the Lufthansa brand? I don't really think so. I think people are so used to disruption at the moment that they say, well, our holiday's ruined, but it's due to the strike, not really due to Lufthansa.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it anyway.
No, I agree. Locally, there hasn't been that much news, like we said, apart from a few things that I've picked up in the rumor mill. The fascinating thing, I think we mentioned it in last week's show when we were talking about, the connectivity between Joburg and Cape Town. And I heard it from one of my mates who was saying it's actually ridiculous. You cannot afford to miss your flights between Joburg and Cape Town at the moment. People are going so far as to route Joburg to Durban and then from Durban to Cape Town, or via
just because they can't get a direct.
Just because there's no direct options.
No, the capacity's not there.
It's insane. I was quite fascinated to hear that. I mean, it's
remarkable, that demand between Cape Town and Johannesburg. That's crazy. Yeah, it's good news, I suppose, that the flights are full and people are flying.
Yeah.
But you wonder where that... there was a story as well. I've looked for a bit more information, but obviously South African Airways look like they're getting a few more aircraft.
I believe there's a few more aircraft being leased in.
Yeah.
Not sure what type. I'm assuming it's 320s.
Yeah, obviously to help with that, they're falling short on the capacity they offer compared to everyone else.
Yeah, so let's see what happens. Qatar, that whole disruption that's been with baggage handlers and that, they've following your advice from last week. Are they?
Yeah. They're taking their own ground handling service with them on the aircraft. But they're actually going to set up a ground handling hub in the UK, similar to what Emirates have. So they'll full set up there just to look after the Qatar aircraft. And I suppose you'll see more and more of that going forward. There's been the whole Brexit thing there as well, so they're not confident that the Brits will sort this out in time for the traffic demand.
Talk about taking things into your own hands, eh?
Yeah. Well, that's how it's done.
They don't have the label of being the world's best airline at the moment for nothing. Eh? Obviously, taking the bull by the horns. You can't do the job, we'll do it ourselves.
Yep.
And that's quite.
And they are the world's best airline, eh?
Yeah, they've been voted that. It was
the airline rankings, they're called.
That's correct. Yeah,
so they're being honoured for its innovation, product and industry leadership, as well as its commitment to keeping the world's critical long-haul air routes open during COVID-19 over the past 30 months, which has resulted in the airline posting a record profit despite losing money on many capped flights. They've done really well, Qatar. It's quite remarkable. They also took out best business class. Did you see that? Best business class on Qatar, that new Q suite, they call it. And the first class experience in business class, and our judges rated it the best overall business class product they've seen.
Pretty resilient setup that. I mean, given the fact that they've had their fair share of nonsense to deal with. I mean, they've had the whole Airbus A350 debacle, and I basically think that they've told Airbus to bugger off with that.
But what's funny with that whole story, they're having to fly the 380s now because they don't have the 350s,
Yeah.
and they need the capacity. So reluctantly, they've had to bring those 380s back. That wasn't their first choice.
No, it wasn't part of the plan. And I mean, I think they've had, a fair struggle with crew as well. It's been quite a thing for them to attract crew to Qatar, but they're obviously making it work. So
Yeah, you're right. It played quite a big role last year. They took a lot of negative press on the
they did.
crew side.
They did.
None more so than from us. But
Yeah.
okay, so we'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Air New Zealand won some awards as well. They took, I think it was Best Premium Economy.
Yes. Yeah.
They're doing quite well. They're an innovative company as well, doing really well. Singapore Airlines won the most prestigious first class award, and Virgin Australia Best Cabin Crew. Emirates was awarded Best In-Flight Entertainment. Always thought SAA had the best first, but Emirates won that award.
Hardly.
Then several new award categories were added this year. Winners Etihad for Best Environmental Airline, Korean for Best Cargo Airline, and Vietjet won Best Value Airline. Qantas Link Best Regional Airline for its outstanding work in remote Australian outback. Shout out to our mates flying for Qantas
yeah.
Link.
Yeah, that would be Tiance and Paul Theron and all
Barry
the guys
and those guys all down there in Oz.
Yeah, gee whiz, haven't heard from them in ages.
Yeah.
Talking about airlines and sort of accolades, Turkish. I don't know if you saw Turkish. They're about to change their name,
Turkai.
Turkai, something like that. But they broke an occupancy record the other day. It's the first time I've seen something like this in the headlines.
What's an occupancy record?
They hosted more than 260,000 passengers with an occupancy rate of over 87%. And I'm assuming that's over a 24-hour period.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a lot of bums and seats.
Yeah.
That's quite something.
It is.
So, I mean, it's also an airline. They just take over. You don't hear much from them.
No, but they're a big
but
airline.
they're big.
They're a big airline.
So, yeah.
Another big airline that's been a sleeping dragon the last couple of years, Cathay Pacific.
Yeah.
They're about to come out all guns blazing.
You think so?
Mm-hmm.
We were sort of talking about
Watch.
this the other day in the office.
Watch the space.
Yeah.
I believe so. Their chief executive, he sort of hasn't been in hiding. He seems like quite a nice guy, actually, but he hasn't had much to say. So he was there at the IATA AGM in Doha the other day, and obviously a lot of questions, pushed his way. And, a bit of a sleeping dragon there at the moment. It looks like they're ready to hit the ground running. What they're saying is they've managed to watch what the issues the rest of the world has had.
Yeah.
So they've seen, these long queues in the European airports. They've seen the baggage handling issues, and they're ready to get going now. They're employing Ryan like you cannot believe. Obviously, I know that they've taken a lot of pilots back.
Yeah.
But they're employing like hell everywhere you look in all different departments. So very interesting one to watch. And obviously there's in the entire group, you've got Air Hong Kong and Hong Kong Express.
Yeah.
So it's that whole group. And I'm telling you, that is going to be one of the first places on the list that the local guys here in South Africa make application to go. There's some sort of affiliation that South Africans have with Hong Kong, and a lot of the guys pre-pandemic were very keen to go there, and watching it open up now, I'm telling you, it's going to leave a void here in South Africa.
Well, now that you talk about it, it's actually, I've realized that a lot of my mates, or our mates rather, in very close circles, would be ecstatic to hear that, because they've had their hopes pinned on getting into Hong Kong for quite a while. And I've always thought, why? If you look at all the nonsense that's been going on there. But to see it opening up and, the opportunities becoming available again and the guys being able to get there, it's going to be quite cool to see for them.
We've got quite a nice group of people that listen to the show there in Hong Kong, and maybe they're better equipped to answer some of the questions. So if you are listening, then shoot us a message there. Let us know how it's going, because from what we're reading, it does look like it's opening up. I mean, Cathay, 8,000 roles will be made available across the group. Of these, 4,000 will go to mainline carrier Cathay, the rest to Hong Kong Express and Air Hong Kong. That's a lot, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he declined to say how many staff members will be rehired, but notes that the airline has reached out to all former staff who have indicated their interest to be rehired when
Really.
the opportunity arises. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good news for the pilots.
It is.
Good news for South African pilots that
Yeah.
don't have a job or don't have a job of their choice at the
Yes.
moment.
Yeah. The guys that are still hanging in the balance for something a little bit bigger, better, and offering a little bit more latitude in salary.
Yes. Well, that's what it boils down to, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
Has South Africa been left behind in salaries? There was an article about what a mainline American carrier captain would earn, and I was quite shocked to see how different. And I know there's lots of variables involved here, and this is probably a sort of a late 50s captain on a wide body at a mainline carrier.
Yeah.
But it was substantially more than what any captain would be earning in this country at the moment.
Yeah, look, that could probably end up being a conversation that would take up a whole podcast on its own. I mean, historically, if we look at what South African Airways pilots got paid all these years, I think they were always labeled as the highest paid pilots in the world or among them. And yeah, at the moment, just with the way everything's had to shrink and be resized and rethought out, I think we are at risk of being at the tail end now of what pilots are getting paid versus the global.
I think so.
I reckon.
We hear a lot of chatter here at Simaero as well, and there's a lot of indication that, maybe looking to the east and, Cathay's been mentioned or the Hong Kong's been mentioned. So, yeah, it's something to be aware of and keep your eye on, and you might see an exodus based on an absolute necessity to go and earn a bit more. I think maybe not as sustainable here as what we would like.
Well, I see it going that way. Particularly with the cost of living in South Africa at the moment.
Crazy, man.
And not to say that it's any cheaper around the world. If the whole world's feeling the pinch on fuel prices, etc., etc., etc. But we talk about how much we're getting taxed here.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And like you say, it's going to be born out of necessity where the guys just, screw it. If I'm going to do 90 hours here or 90 hours overseas.
Well, this is it, eh?
That's the debate.
Yeah, 90 hours overseas and earn a bit more money. So I think a lot of guys will. And maybe you can go overseas and go fly a Comac soon.
Yeah, I see the Chinese.
The C919, so it's a step closer to its certification. Just finished some flight testing.
Yeah.
And that's the final step, I believe.
But interestingly, wasn't there a fair amount of Russian involvement in that initial Comac project?
Was there?
I think there was. Obviously not anymore.
It's got a lot of Western parts on that aircraft. I mean, Honeywell involved, those Leaf engines as well. So there's it's got a lot of CFMs involved there. So it's very Western in that regard. It actually seems like quite a nice aircraft to be honest. I think China Eastern's a launch customer there, so you might be offered a job if you are looking for something overseas on a Comac pretty soon.
Yeah. It's not an ugly airplane.
It's
by
not.
Any stretch
No,
of
it's not.
It's a perfect.
It's a lot better than I thought it would look. I didn't pay much attention to it, but it's actually pretty cool.
Looks wise, it's very similar to the A220 and A320 and I don't know. I suppose a bit of
it's in that bracket.
Touch of Embraer in there, but it's going to be interesting to see how well this area does.
And bigger, it's bigger than a normal regional. Staying with, aircraft we used to fly, the CRJ.
Yeah.
The CRJ 700, they reckon will be around for quite a long time. Mitsubishi say there's nothing else that can replace that aircraft at the moment. There's nothing on the market that remotely comes close to replace that. So you might see CRJs flying around for a bit longer, even though it's an older aircraft.
That's good news because I seem to remember a couple of years back there was concerns about the engines and there not being enough engines available to keep the worldwide fleet going. That was what we heard at our previous operator. Maybe that was just smoke and mirrors, but there was an issue along those lines. But cool, man. Still one of my favorite areas.
Yeah, there's 1,170 of those in service, 465 in storage around the world. So, yeah, I'm glad that those are staying. It's such a nice aircraft.
Yeah. Farnborough Air Show last week.
I told you it didn't have the impact.
Crazy, hey?
Hey?
Apparently the orders were
Way down.
a little bit disappointing, and
They're even having to bring in sort of highlighted orders from late last year and things like that. So it did not have the
effect
that they wanted. So,
but still, I suppose better outcome. Considering where we are in terms of our aviation recovery. So, disappointment, but
but you
not
called
all
it
too bad.
You called it last week. You said, considering where we've been, we'd take that any day of the week. We'd even just take having an air show. Never mind the orders that.
And I mean, an air show it was. I mean, our friends that were there and sending us private messages of the videos of the
look cool,
777 and all that flying. It looked spectacular.
It looked cool.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to broach a subject here, bring a subject to the table. And it's in line with Farnborough, because there was a lot of talk about it at Farnborough. eVTOL.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about it to have a full-on conversation about it on the podcast. I've done a lot of reading this last week about this. There's a lot of different companies, all with different mandates and objectives. But eVTOL is a big thing, and it comes with a huge amount of acronyms as well. So if you big into your acronyms, there's a whole bunch of new ones in this electric vertical takeoff and landing. There's some good articles about it. There's an excellent one in the Air Current about it. And well worth getting your mind around this part of aviation, because it is coming, it is going to be here, and it's probably going to be here sooner than what you think. So if you don't know anything about these electric aircraft that can take off and land vertically, I recommend you do a bit of reading and research, because there's orders that have been made. There's a lot going on in this part of our industry.
Just in the last couple of weeks, as you said, there's been quite a bit of, there's been a few articles that have popped up about it. It certainly caught my attention as well. Virgin Atlantic have been carrying out test flights on a model that they've been involved with. It's called the VX4. They're not the only ones. Just trying to rack up my article here. But in the UK alone, the last couple of weeks, there's been test flights of these types of, I don't know, what do we call them? Are they drones? Are they not? I don't think so. They're not drones.
Did you see Joe Rogan had it on his Instagram page? It was I don't know. It has to be fake. It was a drone that it was incredibly fast. Yeah. He's actually got quite a funny little piece. They were speaking about it when he was doing his show with Lex Friedman the other day about this drone. I mean, you've got to see how this thing moves. And one has to wonder how long before something like that, comes into the market. But in this eVTOL market, there's Joby already. So they didn't exhibit at Farnborough, but one of the well-known brands. Their whole thing is hydrogen, so they believe hydrogen's the way forward. So they've got these hydrogen cells, and it's quite interesting to watch the different approaches. And no one knows yet which is the one that's going to take off. Yeah, the Advanced Air Mobility. That's one of the acronyms that you can get used to. AAM. This is a term that they use, but all the different manufacturers. Hyundai have got one of their own. And they've also got some of their, so it's a whole new phase of aviation that is taking flight shortly. And if you're interested in it, then start reading about it now, because there's a lot of gen, and it's a massive, massive market.
I think it's going to sneak up on us faster than we think. I mean, the UK, the government's funding £9.5 million towards a project of that Virgin Atlantic are using, or running with, and this is towards the development of the project, as well as creating things like vertiports. That's what they're calling these little spots where these things will take off and land from. A vertiport. It's quite a cool name. But I mean, you can almost see that infrastructure happening around South Africa as well. If you look at what we've got set up in Midrand now with Ultimate Heli there,
Yes.
you create a space in a mall parking lot. It wouldn't take too long for the infrastructure to develop. It'd be quite cool.
It's going to happen quick.
I'd far rather fly around in an eVTOL than be stuck on the highway dodging taxis.
Yeah, no doubt. But it's also, you mentioned the money involved there. People want to invest these days, or banks are willing to invest, or companies are willing to invest in this new gen stuff. I mean, eVTOL is going to be high on the list of entrepreneurs around the world. So a lot more companies will be.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I mean, in bigger cities, to try and clear up the backlog on the highways and that, it's
a necessity.
The transportation sector needs it, particularly in Europe. You think about how the train network has probably been overloaded by the cancellation of flights. So in Europe, this is going to be big. And I wonder how it would. Like,
some of them look pretty cool.
Here. Yeah.
I think we should have a separate show on that.
Yeah, we will.
Get someone on and that knows a bit more about it than us. So rather than us trying to commentate too much on it, get someone in. But I found it quite interesting.
No, it is. Very fascinating subject.
Are you ready for an advisory?
Always.
Good. You're doing it.
Okay, cool. Well, this week's advisory comes from a bunch of podcasts that I've been listening to. Locally. I mean, recently. Locally. You sent me a clip a couple of weeks back. I think it was it had Joe Rogan, and he was interviewing Guy Ritchie.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed that clip because there was a powerful message in that. But I heard Guy Ritchie.
We'll leave that link in the show notes as well.
Yeah, do that. It's worth watching. But Guy Ritchie mentioned Jocko Willink. And, I thought, who's this Jocko Willink guy? Because, it was obviously quite inspired by him. So I got onto the Jocko Willink podcast there and started listening to the Jocko podcast. My man.
You're enjoying it.
If you're looking for some highly motivational and some good leadership content, it's worthwhile, checking out Jocko. He's an ex-US Navy SEAL, so a big, burly, tough guy, surfer, but an all-round cool dude, I think. I mean, he plays guitar in his spare time, family man. But, he's got some heavily powerful stories of his training days in the Marines and, coming from a leadership sort of thing. And I thought this might be worthwhile for a bunch of guys to listen to, particularly guys that are like getting their command upgrades. I thought, how would this be pertinent to our aviation training setup? And I would encourage guys like that, because the message on leadership, how to deal with guys, how to
taking responsibility in that.
Exactly, ownership. Worthwhile checking out. So Jocko Willink, check out the Jocko podcast. It's got a lot of cool YouTube videos. And if you're looking for some of that kind of content that gives you that get off your ass
inspiration,
check it out.
Yeah. He also he's the guy that had that video. It's got I think 10 million views. I think the video is called Good.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter what happens to you, you always respond and say good.
Yeah, I found that amazing.
Yeah, the concept there, I think, is really cool. I mean, those that don't know, if something happens or you don't get that promotion or you don't get the job, your response in your head must be good. So I've got more time to get better.
Exactly.
You don't get the new equipment that you want for the podcast. Good.
Come to think of it, in the early days of coming out of the lockdown, you spoke about it because you've obviously read the book before. Yeah. And I seem to remember us having this conversation because you said, shit, we've lost our jobs at Saks now. Good. So what are we going to do now?
Yeah.
And I remember that conversation. And
I had finished reading that book in January 2020.
Really?
So it definitely had Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership.
Yeah.
That book definitely had an influence on my decision to do something after, things went belly up there for us.
Yeah. So look, it's taken me a while to catch up, obviously, on the mountain of content that I'm trying to get through every week. But it's brilliant. I mean, there was some added stuff that's worthwhile checking out. There's a a YouTube series that these guys have got. Jocko Willink, we've mentioned him before. David Goggins,
Yes.
and another guy called Eric Thomas.
Goggins. He's mad.
Hey, nuts.
Yeah.
These guys are just on another level.
Yeah.
You know, they've got this YouTube video thing called Unstoppable.
Okay.
And yeah, you know, if you're having one of those downer days where you think, shit, you know, how am I going to get out of this situation, or you know, just having a funky day, watch some of this. It'll give you a bit of a tweak.
Put you back in the mood.
Yeah.
Well, you opened up Pandora's box here talking about podcasts, and yeah, fully agree. Jocko, that's well worth it. Anything else lately that you can recommend?
Yeah, there's been so much, but most notably, it's been Jocko for me the last couple of weeks.
There's a good podcast out on a Joe Rogan one with Andrew Huberman. I enjoyed.
Yes,
It was really good.
I've actually got that saved to listen to.
That's a good one.
Mm.
And Chris Williamson's he did a podcast with Jocko and with Andrew Huberman lately.
Yeah.
There's also one out with him and Tiago Forte that's really good. So if you're looking for some good podcast content, that's the road I'd go down. Podcasts are quite a valuable source of information for you and me in terms of we do not have quite a lot of time anymore to go and read books. I enjoy reading books, but you know, when there's a little one at home, there's only one book you're reading, and it's called Toddle Waddle. You're not going to get much ownership content from that.
No.
So, yeah, the podcast is where I'm picking up my information. So it's such a valuable source for me, and I get that in the car on the way to work. And it still blows my mind, Ryan. I get and I don't mind, because I know people aren't trying to be nasty by saying it, but how many people say to you, I wish I could listen to your show, but I just don't have the time. It's like, well, when do people ever really have the time to go listen to the podcast at home? Most of the guys are listening to it in the car, driving to work or whatever it is. And we've seen it with the numbers. The data paints a real picture, I must say. If you go back into the pandemic stages, you can see that the majority of our listeners, they were watching the video.
Yes.
And as time's gone on, the audio version has sort of taken sort of center stage, and that's because people are back at work. They're busy.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, I wonder how many people. I don't always listen to a full podcast. You know, you get the information out that you need, and then you're on to the next one.
Yeah.
And you can see that's how a lot of people consume their podcast content. You know, I speak to some people that really like the part we do about the advisory. I speak to others that like to listen to what's happening locally, but then they sort of tune off. And each his own. I mean, it's nothing one has to apologize for. If there's certain segments that you enjoy, please listen to those and pass those on. But I think that goes across the board.
Of course.
Naval Ravikant said it as well. He's got sort of, at any one stage, he's got 20 or so books in his Kindle. Don't read a book so you can tell people that you've read and finished the entire book.
Yeah.
You can read bits of a book and take out the real necessary points out of there, and then move on to the next one. It's like that. Did you ever get that app? Was it called Blinkist?
Yes, I've seen that.
Okay, so basically that's quite a cool thing. It's not the cheapest in the world, which is why I don't have it anymore, but it's quite useful, where they summarize books and podcasts. So if there's a Joe Rogan podcast, it's 4 hours long. They'll summarize it into a 10-minute segment. These are the key points that you can take out of it.
Yeah.
And they do the same with books. A 700-page book, they narrow it down to a 20-minute blink.
Yeah.
All the key things there. So quite useful.
No, it is. I mean, you get the information you need out of it. It's quite right. I mean, thinking of how busy we are, the only time I really get to listen to podcasts personally is on my commute to and from work.
Yeah.
And
you're clearly not going to gym, otherwise you could listen to that gym either.
Yeah, and I don't know when I would get time. If there were 36 hours a day, maybe. But yeah, no, definitely not.
Which is why we're going away this weekend.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have a bit of a break.
No, but like you say, the podcasting thing is, it's. I was listening to Joe Rogan the other day, and I can't remember who he was interviewing, but they were even saying, you know, like radio, Radio, is radio still a thing?
Radio's still a thing. My dad says it to me. He says, I couldn't listen to your show last week because, he was busy or whatever. But then he tells me something that Sasha Martinengo said on the radio. I said, are you fucking joking?
Yeah. No, look, I think it's a generational thing. I mean, podcasting is still so new. And I think that was where their conversation
still so small
was going.
in South Africa.
Yeah. So we'll see. It's an awesome medium, and it is a great source of information. I get a lot of my inspiration and motivation from podcasts every day. So
yeah,
dig it.
And we've got a podcast, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, because I'm also spending my time comparing apples with apples.
So Ryan, we're going away this weekend. Let's encourage people to do the same. How difficult was it for us to organize a weekend away? It took about 5 minutes, eh?
Yeah, it was like, listen, let's make a plan and go away somewhere.
Yeah, so there's always a million excuses.
Yes.
And because you've been listening to Jocko, you'll understand this. Just go and do it.
Exactly.
It's good for you, good for your family. Get out. There's so many ways to go and book these things these days. I mean, booking.com, you can go check everything out on there, choose a place, and off you go. So next week we'll give a bit of a review. It might be the last time we ever travel together with our families.
Yeah, we don't quite know what we've set ourselves up for.
Yeah.
Piling 4 adults and 3 very small children
in a car
for a weekend. Talking about Pandora's box.
But I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Can't wait. It's going to be great fun. And as always, I think we'll light a fire and have a lot of time to talk about more levels of podcasting.
That's it.
Epicness.
Hope you all have a lovely weekend, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
Bye. Uniform turn left heading 220 and contact Chicago departure. Left heading 220, contact departure, Scouts 553 uniform. United 204, fighting 270, 28 right, Echo, Echo cleared for takeoff. 28 right and Echo, Echo cleared for takeoff, heading 270, United 204. Scout 5169.